Hello and welcome to Horseplayer Happy Hour. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you from the Brooklyn bunker once again. A couple 100 miles, maybe 180 away from where we did the show last week, sitting in the booth at the Brentwood. Yeah, one of the sadder weeks of the year with Del Mar and Saratoga ending. I've been back sitting in the office here since Monday, grinding away. But I will say this, Kentucky Downs has been a little bit of a salve for horse players anyway. Plenty of distraction and loads of good stuff coming up this weekend and beyond. We're really getting into the teeth now in earnest of the Breeders' Cup prep season. And to talk about that with me, to talk about these Horseplayer Happy Hour races and this contest we've got going, I now bring in, back from his home base at an undisclosed location in New England, TV's Matt Bernier. He tried to give up the TV thing to Jonathan Kinchin. I won't accept it. It's TV's Matt Bernier around here. How are things, Matt?
Yeah, all's good, Pete. Back in the let's call it the main bunker. It's not the Brooklyn bunker, but it's in the same vein, underground. Kind of got the setup. But yeah, it was nice to get up to Saratoga and hang out for a few days. I thought we saw some good racing, some intriguing results that you can draw your own conclusions going forward, what they mean as far as the Breeders' Cup is concerned. But definitely throws a little bit of a wrinkle into a few different pictures. And to your point, Kentucky Downs has sort of picked up the baton, if you will, for this little gap, and then it'll eventually be handed off to Keeneland and Santa Anita as we inch closer and closer. I think we're under 60 days now until the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar.
That's amazing. I guess we need to book travel, huh? Is that all sorted for you?
TBD. We need to, usually these things wait a little while. I got a bunch of travel between now and then anyway, so we got to get that done first, and then I'll worry about that.
Fair enough. But people out there looking for tickets to the Breeders' Cup, there are some available. We encourage you to go over to breederscup.com and check that out, as well as, hey, get yourself kitted out with the latest Breeders' Cup gear. I wonder if they still have any of that retro gear they dropped last year. I was very pleased to replace my shirt that I originally brought at my first Breeders' Cup back in 1998, that cool Gulfstream Park one. Probably a few others you can get over there in the Breeders' Cup shop as well. So we've got 14 minutes to race 8 at Kentucky Downs. That's the first race we'll be talking about on this show. But let's set the scene a little bit. I'm sure there are some new people clicking on this link, wondering what it is. Horseplayer Happy Hour, the Horseplayer Happy Hour Tour. Matt, I'll let you take them through the high-level details. Yeah,
look, it's been an ongoing sort of series of events from earlier on, let's say late spring, right up through. We've got a couple weeks left. The idea is the top 10 finishers every week, you accrue points toward the regular season total. Whoever ends up with the most points at the end of the regular season, they win a full $10,000 BCBC seat. If you don't end up being the overall point leader, fear not, there's still a postseason that you can get involved in. You either qualify by finishing in the exact in any one of these events that punches your ticket to the postseason, or you end up in sort of that next tier. Whoever has earned the most points throughout the regular season, you automatically qualify for the playoffs. And that'll be a series of weeks where we'll whittle the field down. And when all is said and done, from a final table, someone will emerge on top and gain another $10,000 Breeders' Cup betting challenge seat. So many ways to get involved with this thing, many opportunities out there. And as always, don't forget, the top 10% of these contests qualify for this coming Saturday's BCBC qualifier over on horseplayers.com. And as always, the VIG, the juice, ends up going out to a good cause, to TAA and TRF.
There are so many benefits to this program, and I'm glad that was really good. We should record that and just play it every week, because you actually hit. Maybe the first time one of us hit every single note. Just $20 to play. It goes to a great cause. And then there were 3. So we've just got the regular season games coming up. Let's see. We've got one on the 16th, and then the final one will be on the 23rd. Those playoffs will start with 80 players on October 1st. But again, you can come in the last week, finish in the top 2, and boom, you're in the playoffs. So we'll give an update on the tour leaderboard. When last we saw our man at KY Gambler, David Browning, had a bit of a stranglehold on that title. But things can change quickly. If somebody busts off a first and a second here in these last couple of weeks, maybe that could get tight and interesting as well. It looks like producer Craig, Johnny on the spot, is ready to pull up that current list. Let's see what it's looking like. I mean, this is impressive, folks. 6'10". I mean, he's not mathematically clinched, but he's getting real close. The other thing is, though, you can get tour points on more than one entry. So he is not mathematically there, but he's looking very good. In the Money Media's own Michael Domable, who's been covering Kentucky Downs wonderfully over at inthemoneypodcast.com. He's second.
Well, Pete, I don't want to interrupt, but that's the storyline for this week right now. And we'll get to the leaderboard where things stand at the moment for today's contest. But you brought up Michael Domabil. He has 3 entries right now inside the top 14. So this
He's going down. My man's going down swinging.
This is and they're all the same. So if he catches fire here at the end, and let's say he runs, I'm making it up, 1, 2, 3. That's. I mean, obviously that's the best case scenario. David Browning is not home and hosed at this point. Put it that way.
That's 270 points, and all of a sudden, he's right there on top of it. That's great stuff from Michael, who'll be joining me for a Sunday podcast about Kentucky Downs as well. Hoping to get that one sponsored. I think it'll be outside the paywall over on inthemoneypodcast.com. Worst case scenario, it might be under our plus banner, but we'll get that figured out one way or another. Just to shout out the top 5, Bruce Meyer, Bill Chenford, who's had such success in live bankroll contests like the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, and then Don Marquardt in 5th right now on the tour in that in a tie with the 270 points. Another thing that's different about these shows that we love is the opportunity to interact with our commenters. And we have a lot of commenters chiming in already. We encourage you to ask questions, whether they're about Breeders' Cup coming up or winning your in action this weekend. I haven't done much work on the other races this weekend, but hey, ask. Maybe Matt knows, maybe I know. General handicapping, form study questions, whatever it is, who you like in these races at Kentucky Downs. We really want to hear from you and be interactive. We'll do the shout outs for now I'm not sure if it's Johanna or Johan, but yeah, thank you for chiming in. Oscar is in there. Peter gives us the old hi gang. We've got Ipismo El Deporte de Reyes. We'll say hi to that account. Kim Weir, speaking of the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, greetings from Saratoga, counting down to our trip to my hometown, meaning San Diego, and the original home track. That's going to be fun getting to hang out with her out there. Sarah asked a good question. Is this horse racing? I could see how seeing 2 guys in bunkers, you might not know, but yes, it is horse racing. We will be showing races very shortly. Hang in there. Michael Bryant says hi. He's been a great contributor. Here's Michael Domabil. It's a very good point he makes. His picks available over at inthemoneypodcast.com if you want to check those out. And then we have Sarah. Sounds like a lucky horse like Secretary. I don't know what that means, but we appreciate you tuning in. And Michael Bryant wants us to shout out the top 6. I guess that means he's in 6, which makes sense given how active he's been in these tournaments all along the way. Let's should we pivot and talk about this upcoming race at Kentucky Downs, Matt?
Sure, let's do it.
Or we could look at the leaderboard up to this point. Maybe we should do if producer Craig is paying attention, we'll do that. We'll do that first, and then we'll rock and roll. I'm getting phone calls. It's screwing me up.
I just got a phone call too.
That's was it the same phone? Was it was it some sort of party line that we don't know about?
Unless my mother's calling you, then no.
She was a little concerned about your language and no, that's not true. Okay, let's roll through this leaderboard. How many? One little point of interest. How many did we get today to know how many have an opportunity to be moving on through the traditional qualifying route to from this feeder into the qualifier on Saturday? Do you have that information at the ready?
173. So that means that the top 17 move on to the Saturday BCBC qualifier, and then the 3 folks who unfortunately don't finish inside the top, or I should say the next 3 outside of the top 17, you're going to get your $20 back.
Kentucky Downs, I'm glad to see our players really supporting it. I'll say this too. With our Saratoga Thursdays, we got really unlucky with weather, and I do think that hurt our numbers. I was reflecting on that. I was a little surprised we didn't get a few more, but I think that was really a part of it. I feel like every week we had off the turf. Okay, let's run these down. Peter Savage in first. I'm not going to read all the dollar amounts, but I will say that our current leader has 53.40, and I'll note Michael Robinson in that second spot currently the exacta threshold 47.80. Then we've got Tom Rapps, Amy Warren, the aforementioned Michael Domabil, Mark Simonovich, Stephen Culhane, Michael Bryant once again, Steve Genslinger, Chris Bloom, Paul Matisse, handicapping champion Paul Matisse. I'm guessing that is that is the Paul Matisse that is. And then William Bemmer in 12th place. Craig, if you give me a scroll, I'll do a couple more. just to get down to everybody else in the current money right now. Pete Dressens, those other two Michael Domable entries, Chris Couples, who's been one of the comments MVPs so far, and then a longtime friend of the show, Ernest Hay Jr. And we'll give a shout out to Mr. Soma Bombs, Mike Somich, who did a great job recently on the In the Money airwaves as part of our NHC pregame show. We've had a lot of people ask me actually about the NHC. When are we going to have Justin Mustari on? It's going to happen. We've just been having trouble getting our schedules coordinated. And once I couldn't do it sort of immediately on the eve of the situation, I decided to let's let him chill for a couple of weeks, get that perspective, and we'll come back at him then. So with that said, Matt, I do think it's time for us to have a look at this 8th race at Kentucky Downs. We've got 6 minutes to post for this one.
I must have missed the scratch of the 2, Mystery Messenger, because that was not a scratch from earlier today. Nonetheless, we can pivot to my second choice in here. And it's a horse that I don't totally trust, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, the public is supporting the horse as well. On the far outside, Charcoal, the number 9 in here. I don't know if it's a product of finally being shortened up on grass that has made this one blossom, but boy, that most recent speed figure sticks out like a sore thumb, and visually it was spectacular. The horse really extended down the lane and drew off and won for fun at Indiana Grand. I wasn't totally 100% convinced about the 94 buyer. If he runs back to it, I think he wins, but I'd be lying if I said I thought 2.5 to 1 was all that appetizing. He would have been my second pick behind the 2, but with the 2 out, I guess I'm going to go with the 9, Charcoal.
Yeah, I don't love the price. I mean, we had an interesting discussion. We did a show this morning about these 6.5 races at Kentucky Downs and how they play. Pat Cummings pointing out that in many instances that there's enough of a run-up that the 6.5 is actually more like 7, and they've got that testing finish that makes me think it might play longer. But Blake Jesse made the point about the first part of the race being downhill, and he looked at it in the complete opposite way. But if you have those little bit of stamina concerns about Charcoal based on the 5 furlong form, yeah, I mean, that's a little too short for me to want to get involved in a race that, I think the competition runs fairly deep. I agree Mystery Messenger would have been an interesting one, but I'm a little bit back to the drawing board in the absence of those couples. So I'm going to keep piecing through the race here. Who else did you think might be interesting in this spot?
Well, I think a lot of people, understandably so. You look at a horse like Shiraz, who, when this one was at his best, he could certainly win a race like this. I do wonder a little bit at this juncture in the game, are we best suited for New York bred company? And now against open runners, maybe this is going to be a little too tough, especially at a price like 3 to 1. The other one taking money in here is the 8 horse that's Bad Beat Brian, another Mike Maker runner coming in from the West Coast, coming in from Del Mar. I have a working theory. It's anecdotal. I don't have anything to back it up, but I'm curious your thoughts. I've really been looking, and I remember back the last fall, many runners at Keeneland that ran well had success at Kentucky Downs. I'm seeing more and more as I go through. It doesn't mean that every runner this works for, but I'm seeing many horses who maybe they haven't run at Kentucky Downs just yet, but have run well at Keeneland in the past. I want to try to make that argument. So I'm starting to look for those kind of horses who maybe they haven't had an opportunity to run here, but they've run well in Lexington before. Maybe that'll transfer over to Kentucky Downs. I don't know, again, if there's anything that's actually behind that, but I'm kind of getting stuck into that train of thought. Does that sound crazy?
It doesn't sound crazy, and there could be something to like the composition of the turf course that has to do with it. It could also just be that, they're two of the classier courses when it comes to turf racing. So, I'd not put that together myself. And in some ways, in terms of the configuration, obviously they're not the same. But that doesn't mean that the form, if the form's traveling and that's an angle that's working, I certainly wouldn't put you off it. I think I'm going to go with the 6 Lamartine at the prices in this spot. This looks like a runner, just looking at the pace lines of the last race, should be suited to this cutback. And I like the idea, the way that I'm seeing this 6.5 for a runner, a cutback type runner. Well, that's not often an angle we talk about on the grass nearly as much as the dirt. I think it could work, especially in a little bit more of what I'm thinking is going to be a galloping configuration. I think Lamartine might have the early pace to stay in touch, and hopefully the fitness and the finish to pass them all in the lane. I totally get Charcoal. I just think the 5-2 is a little bit light. I share your concerns about Shiraz in this spot. The Maker Barn not doing its typical tricks at this meet. I just want a little bit more of a price, and I think Lamartine might be a good place to land in this 8th race at Kentucky Downs.
For anyone looking at Bad Beat Brian, who's your co-second choice right now, 3-1, he had a claim voided coming out of that most recent start down at Del Mar on August 8th. What's your overall take on voided claims? Do you approach them sort of at arm's distance?
Yeah, I don't love it. I mean, you'll see them win just fine. It's not, oh my God, the horse can't win. If it's a horse that I have other angles on, we're getting a little bit of a price, but it's one of those angles for me that if I'm on the fence, or if a horse is like a little too short or whatever, it's the kind of thing that'll push me off to say, nah, not so much. And that's where I am in that situation.
And I'm looking for anything that can help me with Kentucky Downs. I'm headed down there tomorrow morning, and we've got a show on Saturday. I've had trouble in the past with trying to decipher what we're looking for as far as form is concerned, because I've seen horses jump up whose form has been dreadful, but for whatever reason, they take to a turf course like this, and vice versa. Horses that come into their races looking like they're sitting on a peak effort, they just really hate the configuration of the racetrack. I mean, is there anything specific that you look for headed into these kind of races?
I mean, what we've talked about on the shows a few times is how you can see an outsized importance for horse for course type stuff. And, I was toying. I had a pet theory. It's funny. You come up with these pet theories, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. The other turf course in North America I see as more of a galloping style turf course is Woodbine. So I was actually looking if, Woodbine shippers, and they've actually done terribly. Now, that might be largely key to the fact that for whatever reason, the Mark Casse barn, which is responsible for so many of them, doesn't have the greatest record at Kentucky Downs. So, yeah, I mean, it's a work in progress. I mean, I think it's no accident, the Rosario success. I think the way that he can get so much out of a horse in the finish. I want to see horses that can finish their races. I do think it matters a little bit more. And they're, late pace figures are one way to ascertain that. I think sometimes just class is a way to ascertain that. So, I mean, it's almost like an extreme version of normal turf handicapping, where it's class, it's late pace, it's horse for course type stuff, and some softer trainer angles. It's not as much like attritional speed. We do have a few other comments. Tom chiming in from Colorado Springs. Michael Bryant tipping the 9, though he agrees that the price is a question. Brian says number 8 sounds like my day at the track. Bad Beat Brian right there for him as we break the void, put Tom off Bad Beat Brian onto the 9. And then we've got a bet from Daniel, 4, 9, 8 try and 20 to win place on the 4 as they're off and running here. Let's see what kind of position our horses are in. I'm going to make a big screen here so we can see how we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the 9 is concerned, I don't think you can complain too much about the trip. Broke really alertly, and Flo quickly got down there to save a little bit of ground. 5 looks a little keen out there on the front end, setting the fractions, which is another thing that's very difficult for me to kind of make heads or tails of. How fast is too fast, given they're running downhill. Yep. So 21 and 3 at face value, I look at that and go, ooh, they're cooking. But if they're starting downhill, I don't know how fast that actually is in relation.
It's one of those things where I wish I was more familiar with all the nuances and watch more races here. Part of the coverage that we're doing with Kentucky Downs, we're really trying to get people who specialize in it. It's such fun racing, but it's not easy to know all the intricacies of it as they start to come down. It's like it's even hard when you look at it to know, like, where exactly are we on the course, though. Lamartine certainly in a prominent position here.
Yeah, I mean, going away, winning rather convincingly. And we've talked about it. This is an exercise to do, to go back and try to, was there something that you missed? For me, No, not really. I mean, I this wasn't a horse that I loved, and you're going to get 5-1. I have to be honest. To me, seems a hair on the light side, but maybe with the 2 scratches, that kind of levels things out some. Turn back in distance. You talked about that. Not often that you get to see a turn back where I don't think it's so severe from a mile to 5. This, if it's 6.5, or perhaps even plays a little bit more like 7, I think that's plenty reasonable. But it's just a horse that I wasn't particularly interested in, but took to this Kentucky Downs turf course despite being 0 for 1 on it lifetime in the past.
Yeah, I did go back and look at that race, and the fact that he was over his head there made me not count that against him. And yeah, I mean, turnbacks, they're not all created equal, but the thing I really like is that angle when you look at the pace line, right? So you look at that last, not to red board this too much, it's just a 5-1 winner, but I like the fact that also that the horse ran on the prep day at Ellis, just suggesting that this was like the plan. But then just looking at time form, the numbers go 98, 115, 119, 112, 106 the last day. And that just makes me think that a faster final time is going to be achievable if you don't have to run all the way through that line. This is the horse, got tired, downlined in the jargon that I've heard Paul Matisse use for these type of things. And so you take that out of the equation. And again, it was a race with 3 or 4 contenders, and I this was the biggest price.
It's a good shout. Good shout.
We'll take it. It's always nice to have a winner to kick off the show and get to feel smart for a minute until the next race comes along. Did anybody? I'm trying to see if in our comments. No, it doesn't look like anybody followed me in, at least in here. But if you were out there, if you backed that winner, if you have a story, a trip that you saw him of your horse in behind, if you want to talk about the next race or anything else going on in the world, go on and hit us. In the meantime, maybe we should take a quick look ahead to some of this win and you're in action that's happening on Saturday. This weekend, we've got 5 win and you're in races in Ireland. These are the 2 Irish Champion Stakes days. This is worth throwing on in the background in the morning through your ADW or wherever you're watching racing on TV, because you're going to see key Breeders' Cup contenders on display in Ireland. I'll be honest, I haven't done the races yet. We do have a special segment on tomorrow's flagship late week show podcast. We've got Michael Adolphson, who's doing writing about international stuff for the Breeders' Cup. We've got Naomi Tucker, who was the Breeders' Cup correspondent last year on the international stuff. And then we've got also from our team, Alex Sauceville, who follows the English and Irish stuff very closely. We're going to have all kinds of good ideas on who's going to win those races. But I think that we should take a look right now, Matt, at the domestic win and you're in action. And that's happening right here at Kentucky Downs. And I'm just struggling to find the page. Which is the first? Do you have it offhand? Which is the first of the win and you're in races?
Yeah, so race number 8 is going to be the first one. It's also going to be part of the NBC broadcast, 5 to 6 Eastern on Saturday. It's the FanDuel Turf Sprint going 6 furlongs, and they'll follow that up with the Calumet Turf Cup going 1.5 miles. Those are the 2 win and you're in races. I think they're really competitive, honestly. You can go through and I think identify a number of logical contenders, but I think especially so in this turf sprint, you've got, I don't want to say the who's who of this sort of division, but you go through from top to bottom. You've got Fast Boat, who just won the Troy up at Saratoga for fun. You've got Bombard, who I believe was runner-up in this race last year, or ran very well anyway in one of these races last year at Kentucky Downs. You've got a horse like Casa Creed, who's a Grade 1 winner, turning back out of the 4-star Dave. It feels like he blossomed once they turned him back to 1 turn. This is what he wants to do. You've got Stormy in here, another Grade 1 winner multiple times over, and she's run well at Kentucky Downs in the past. And that's not to mention Chewing Gum and Stubbins and Imprimis. So this is really kind of a who's who of the sprint division. I'll be very interested to see how this translates to the 5 furlongs at Del Mar, because in my head, logically, it's an apples to oranges kind of setup. But I mean, again, I'm curious kind of your thoughts on how seriously, despite the fact that this is a wildly different configuration than what we'll see at Del Mar, how seriously do you take a race like this just simply because of the quality of the race?
It's really hard because it is so different. And a runner, now I know you've pointed out that Got Stormy has done well at this over this course sprinting, and I don't think she can be counted out. But I think it's after the 4-star day. JK and I had this conversation. I can't remember if it was on air or off, where we were saying we want we actually want Got Stormy to either run in like the Woodbine Mile or Kentucky Downs, some more galloping configuration to darken that form a little bit. So then when she gets back to Del Mar around those tight turns again that she loves, we can maybe get a price on her in a race like the Breeders' Cup Mile. Wasn't necessarily anticipating the cut back to the sprint. She's certainly live, but I'm going to just go with that pet theory right now that this one, that Got Stormy, wants to run around those tight turns. We saw Imprimis, the winner of this race last year. You know, he was just unlucky in the Breeders' Cup. It's not that, I don't think it's that the course didn't suit him. It's that he had just a absolutely hellacious trip. So I think it's a halfway decent pointer to just because it's so darn classy. I mean, how many turf sprints in the year have this many legit horses in them, as we're going to see in this 8th race, this win and you're in turf sprint on Saturday? So, I mean, I think you have to take it seriously just because it's such good form. But, you know, you can't expect the Breeders' Cup to be a carbon copy because, you know, tight turns and you know, that extra. The difference between this race on Saturday, which is a 6 furlong race technically, and then the Breeders' Cup turf sprint at Del Mar, it's going to play a lot different than just a one furlong difference. And so it's, you know, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here about it, but I think unfortunately it's one of those times in racing where you have to do that a little bit because it's going to depend on the horse and how we evaluate him coming out of here. But for me, I mean, the one, you know, we're not going to do our sort of final answers on these races. We're talking about this on the Late Week Show. You're doing another pod with Howard later where I think you're reserving your right to give your like pick. But I have to say, looking at Imprimis, I think he looks very, very well set up to run a very big race in here. After running a decent race with a little bit of trouble in the Troy, where he had every license to be short, going to sharp 5.5 at Saratoga, coming to this more galloping 6 where he's had success before. If this 6-1 guess of the morning line is right, and it may well be with all these recent horses in good form coming in here, I think he might take a lot of beating in this spot. And I might have trouble going in any direction that isn't him.
Yeah, I mentioned, like you say, I'm going to be on Howard's podcast later on tonight. Those of you who are curious, you can find that over on all the details will be on Howard's Twitter over there. But I said to him, I'd like to consult another product that unfortunately doesn't come out until the day before the races are run, before getting actually stuck into a pick. So I'll talk a little bit more on the general side of things. But I'd be lying if I said the horse that I'm hopeful the numbers will come back and support my logic and my thought. I think Gear Jockey's kind of sneaky in here. To me, he's that horse that he's probably been doing things throughout his career that maybe he doesn't want to do. I think actually going one turn is maybe what he's wanted to do all along, very similar to what we saw with Casa Creed when he won the Jaipur on Belmont Stakes Day. You can do something very well going 2 turns, Casa Creed or a horse like Gear Jockey. But really, when you get cut back to that 1 turn, maybe it is just as simple as you can save a little bit of that energy and really unleash a potent turn of foot at the end of a run. I thought his race in the Troy for Gear Jockey was actually pretty good in the big picture, rallying from as far back as he did. I don't think that's really I don't want to say it's a style that's not conducive to success going 5.5 at Saratoga. We've seen horses rally from well off of it, but I still think you'd rather be more forward than coming from too far back. Gear Jockey, I think he might be a little bit closer this time around, and stamina, I'm not terribly concerned about it with him. And I would think, based on the paper and based on the company in this race, you're going to get something pretty darn close to that 10-1. So hopefully the program that I use kind of checks out and confirms my hope anyway. But Gear Jockey is kind of the way that I'm leaning in here.
I mean, you make an interesting case, and I think the price will be right. I mean, whoever you get, I'm hoping you're going to be able to get a decent price. It's a really exciting race. This is the kind of race that I wish I had the time to do like a runner by runner write-up. I feel like the more you dive into this form, and this is true of a lot of these Kentucky Downs races, they do not lend themselves to quick capping. You know, you can really go down the rabbit hole and try to figure out what's going on. It looks. I mean, another thing I'll say about Gear Jockey, you don't have a clocker report or anything, but just looking at the workout tab, that last workout also does suggest that this Calumet Farm runner might be sitting on a very big effort at what could be a nice price. I'm excited to see how it plays out on the track. I will also probably be, as part of my attheraces.com previews. It's a little awkward. I normally, my first gut was I want to write all about these Kentucky Downs races, but for whatever weird rights reason, they're not on the channel. But I still think I can get these 2 winning your ins off the goalpost and do a little bit of writing. So there'll be more from me on this over at attheraces.com. Let's see if we have got a few comments. Folks, we encourage you out there. Shout out, ask us questions, whatever you want to do. And yes, I will answer questions about my facial hair. It is. I did go for the late summer plumage kind of thing, but I don't know. I did this weird thing where like now half my neck is tanned and half, looks like the kid from Powder. It's not great. But anyway, Trish Smith chimed in. It seems like Ellis Park shippers have been doing well this meet, possibly better than even Saratoga. Do we have any stats on that? I'm trying to think if there's a program. I do not have stats on that, but I think a program like Stats Race Lens might have something like that. What I would do, Trish, about that one is send a tweet to our man Matt Vagvolgi, and I'll pull up his Twitter in the meantime. He's my go-to guy for all stats things that require Stats Race Lens, and send him a tweet and ask him that question. He's very responsive and good at those type of things, and that's a great question. It's making me realize that I probably should have done an entire I should have probably done a written piece about Kentucky Downs, a meet preview. It's such an interesting race. So Matt's at BlinkersOn22. Go ahead and send him a tweet. I bet he can answer that one for you. Brian Shields, Bombard seems like a loose leader on paper. Would you guys agree? Let me take a look at my little pace map for this one.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he seems like the clear leader. The only thing that makes me wonder a little bit, Diamond Oops is a fascinating horse just in general, because I think he's just as good on the main track as he is on grass and vice versa. He's also shown a remarkably versatile running style throughout his career, where he can come from 15 out of it, or he can actually be up there contesting the pace. Coming off of a rather lengthy layoff, in my heart of hearts, I think they kind of have to be a little aggressive with him. Maybe he's not fast enough to go with Bombard early on, but when I look at something like the Timeform US Pace Projector, it has Diamond Oops well off of it, and I do understand that based on some of the more recent running lines, but there's a part of me that does wonder, fresh off a bit of a layoff, there's not a lot of other speed in the race, and who knows how he can handle this track. I'd like to think they're going to be a little bit more aggressive from the inside, but that's pure speculation at that point. To your overall statement, yeah, I mean, Bombard looks like he is going to be the one, whether it's pressured or not. He's got one way to go, I think, and that's right to the front.
Be interesting. Timeform has Born Great with Attabaskitza up not too far behind, and Born Great is a runner who's had some success running on the front end, again, though not in the recent runs. So be interesting to see what tactics they choose there. But yeah, I mean, Flavian Pratt certainly as good as anybody rationing out speed on the front end. Bit of a flow upgrade, I'd say, coming out of that Daytona. That's not a bad angle either. I mean, this is a loaded race. I think you can make cogent cases for 8 or 9 of them, which is pretty darn impressive. We have some leaderboard movement. Apparently, Michael points out that Paul Matisse, who I was citing his angle on the cutback, I wasn't looking at, at what he looks at, but the same principle applies with Timeform US. I wonder if it was the same angle that led Paul to that horse. We'll see where that puts him on the leaderboard. Be fantastic to get him up into the finals. And then a self-deprecating remark, trying to reverse mush himself. David Browning, KY Gambler 68, switch to the wrong lead and tiring. Show me the finish line. We'll see if you get saved by the wire or not. A lot's going to have to do with Michael Domabile, I think, and what happens to him in these next couple of races. Craig, let's go ahead and take another look at that leaderboard if you're able. I see it there. Can I put it up into the screen? No, I think we have to wait for Craig. He might be getting a soda.
I can spoil a little bit of the surprise. We do have a new leader, and it is Paul Matisse.
Very nice, very nice. Oh, I want Paul in our finals, if only because we'll make him be a guest for that for that first shot. But we've got no shortage of great guests, as we have all these regular commenters too, who I think we should be reaching out to as the season moves on. But yeah, I'll pull it up. I'll pull up the leaderboard and give a little bit of an update here. And I'm also very curious to see who Michael Domabile has in these next couple of races. That'll be fun to check out as well. You mentioned about your travel schedule coming up, Matt. What do you got? Let folks know what's cooking and where they can get more of you.
Yeah, first thing tomorrow morning, I'm headed down to Nashville and going to drive out to Kentucky Downs for the Saturday show. That's going to be, again, 5 to 6 Eastern on NBC. And then the following week, going to be heading up to Woodbine for a couple of days of winning your in action for the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series on Saturday and Sunday. Looking forward to that. And I believe it's going to be the first time, assuming all goes according to plan, that I will get to see Nick Luck in probably almost a full year. So I'm looking forward to that. That should be a good time. Be home for a week, and then we've got 4 days worth, I believe it's 4, maybe only be 3, but TBD, of Keeneland action. I won't be at Keeneland, unfortunately. I'm going to be in Stamford, Connecticut, but many broadcasts across the NBC. I believe it's all on NBCSN, but we'll be going over. I mean, it's the beautiful thing about Keeneland. When the fall meet opens up, there's just a million winning your in races down there. So we'll be covering almost all of them over on NBCSN for a little while. And then before you know it, we're going to be rolling up on the Breeders' Cup. It's
such a great meet, Keeneland. I'm pumped. I'm not going to get down there opening weekend, it doesn't look like, which is a bit of a bummer because the stakes action is so fast and furious that weekend. But I think I'm going to do something different. I think I'm going to go for the second weekend, which means I can hang out for the contest. And then I might hang all that week because we've got an event with our friends at TaylorMade, I believe, that week. And chance, I love the idea of being there for dark days. It just makes it much easier to get out to the farms, visit our friends at, Gainesway and Ashford and Mill Ridge and all those great places. And then I was thinking about doing the double Saturdays, but then I remembered that October 23rd, Susan's birthday. So I better head back Saturday morning, but it'll be.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good call.
It should be very fun, though. It should be an entertaining week or so out in Keeneland, and I believe that's where I'll get to see Nick Luck for the first time in nearly a year. I'm bummed to not be made. I don't think I'm gonna. It's almost impossible. It is impossible. I'm not gonna make British Champions Day at Ascot, which I was fantasizing about. But I guess it'll make it all the sweeter getting back for the Royal meeting next year. Really quickly, Paul Matisse, new leader, $61. He's got the 10 and the 1 to wrap things up. Then Peter Savage, Amy Warren, Steve Genslinger, Michael Robinson, Charles Lucas, Chris Bloom, Tom Rapps, Michael Domable, Mark Simonovich, Stephen Culhane, Michael Bryan again, Joe Hierchek, Ron Kaufman, Nick Warius, Stephen McNatton, William Bemer, and that's our top 17 right now. Just looking for some popular numbers. I'm going to take a wild guess that, I've looked at the races so I know, but you would know just from looking at the chiclets on the horseplayers.com screen how open these races are because you see a whole lot of different colors. That's another fun thing about playing on horseplayers.com and these pick and pray events. You can have a player you follow. Maybe it's David Browning. Maybe it's Paul Matisse. Maybe it's Jonathan Kitchen. Maybe it's Matt Bernier. And you can see who they picked along the way. I know people who will, see, oh, wait, JK liked that 7. I'm going to put that one in my pick 5. And, you can have success that way, like turning horseplayers.com or horse tourneys at the sister site into your own personal tout service.
I'll tell you what, though, I think it is a good exercise as well to go through, maybe not try to piece together, you're never really going to know what each of these individuals' thought process was when they picked a certain horse. But I can't help but notice, I'm going through and taking a look at some of the numbers that are up there for Kentucky Downs race number 9 and the horses that I like, and we'll get into the race momentarily. There are some, I think, conclusions to be drawn that either many people at the top of the list are looking at things in a similar fashion. Maybe some folks are using similar products, whatever it may be. But I think it's a good way to kind of reverse engineer some stuff. And whatever your thought process was, go through and take a look and say, okay, well, even if the horse doesn't run particularly well today, clearly I was seeing something that other people were seeing as well.
I think that's a really smart way of looking at it. And also it can come into play sometimes if you're in a contest and you're in the end game in a live contest where you can change your picks to have some idea of what another player is going to play, to know who's not afraid to take the favorite, to know who will never, ever take a favorite, to know who has a pet trainer or jockey, or to know who's always betting speed. I can remember making that analysis with Ray Arsenault's deep run at the recent the second to last NHC, and just seeing what I know he's another guy who uses not the same handicapping software we were talking about before, but another handicapping software that's clearly tilted towards speed. Because like so many horses that just you didn't have to do much to know, like, well, that horse is going to be on the lead. And then, if you were in a situation in the end game and you needed to block Ray, you probably would have had a pretty good chance to do it betting the speed. And it also shows you, I think, a truism about contest play and how you find long shots. I mean, these days, the market does such a good job of telling you who the fastest horse is. It happens once in a while, but it's very hard to make a bet based on who the fastest horse is because it's so obvious it gets priced in. So that leads contest players to wanting to look for situations where they can bet on a horse that's not the theoretically fastest horse in the race. And to see success that a player like Ray had betting the speed, well, boom, you've nailed it. That's one of the ways you see a lot of 8-1 plus winners. Gosh, I feel like they used to be 15-1 plus. These days, you got to bring that number down a little. But, it's pace scenarios. It's when there's a meltdown, you see 8-1 or higher, or when there's a lone speed, you see 8-1 or higher, a disproportionate amount of the time. Do you think that's still true?
Yeah, well, and I think another thing that I've grown to take a look at and understand, you look at some of these larger events. So let's just say again, this contest today, 173 people, and it didn't happen today, but using it as an example, you've seen in the past where after the first race, there's a horse that wins and pays, I don't know, $22. And you look at it and say, wow, that horse was the fifth, sixth choice in a field of 9. What did I miss? Well, when a quarter of the contest or a third of the contest has the same horse, so there's no real separation there for anybody, but it just goes to show what contest folks, I think, are programmed to look for certain things and take advantage of overlays. And I don't think the general public it's a bit of a generalization, I understand, but I don't think the general public is conditioned to think that way. Whereas with a contest, you really can't afford to be playing underlays. You don't have enough opportunities or options in a 12-race contest. You can't just settle. Christian Helmers was one of the ones who kind of drilled this into my head. You only have X amount of opportunities. So if you're going to take short prices, they have to win. You can't burn a shot there on a horse that's 3 or even 4-1 unless you think or that the horse is going to win. Otherwise, mathematically, you're better off taking horses that are going to be going off at overlaid prices that maybe they're not the most likely winner, but you're going to put yourself in a position where if they do connect, not only do you have them, but you've basically taken out 2/3 of the field in a weird way, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Mythical is very hard for me because as I've evolved as a player, I really like to try to find races that I can lock up in multi-race sequences where I can just tell you what's going to happen. And those don't tend to be with horses that are 6-1 and higher. In this format, you need to, those races, whatever, you either have to stretch out of your comfort zone or fire a bullet at one of the two you're trying to lock it up with and try to be right. You're much better off in races where, like the one we were talking about on Saturday, where you can have a short list of 4 or 5 horses and play the one that's the longest odds. I mean, that's that mentality of letting go of trying to be like, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen in this race, and look at it much more probabilistically than deterministically. And that can, that yields fruit. And some people can do that mental jujitsu better than others. And I, unfortunately, have gotten worse about it. I used to be better when I was working on Winning Contest Player. Like, that was my mentality. I was playing contests way more than cash. Playing cash, I like to do both. But if I'm being honest with myself, I'm not particularly good at mythical money and cash at the same time, because for me the hats just don't quite fit right at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I think too, you bring up a good point. You're someone who, if you're talking about it from a multi-race standpoint, you want to say, look, this race, there are only, in my opinion, two outcomes that could possibly happen. This is how I'm going to go about playing things. I think a lot of it is what your comfort zone is as far as gambling is concerned. I know, as much as I like a good pick 5 or a carryover and a pick 6 or whatever it is, or even a pick 4, I am much better at looking at the tote board right now and going through and saying, oh, well, this horse is an overlay, this horse is an underlay, the bet's going to be this one. Well, you don't always have that opportunity in a pick 4 or a pick 5 or a pick 6. And maybe partially my sort of thought process comes from starting off kind of in the contest background and working my way in that way. But it is to my detriment in multi-race sequences, because I'll go through, you'll have a 10-horse field, and I'll go, realistically, I can make a case for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And before you know it, I go through and I've put together a ticket and it costs $8,000. I go, well, this isn't going to work. You can't play that. And even when you ABC it, it gets all jacked up. So I think it is just in how you look at races and how you think about what you actually want to do. Because from a multi-race sequence, I'm certainly not the one that you would want to be listening to, especially compared to you or Jonathan, and Jonathan specifically, because of all the success he's had in multis, and basically getting stuck into that opinion saying, this is where I don't have to worry about this. The rest of the sequence is where I can kind of branch out. But this right here, this is going to happen. In my head, I look at that kind of race and I go, the most likely winner, sure. I'm going to say, I'll make it up 45% of the time. But then what about the other 55% of the time? And what horses are going to go off at odds that they shouldn't go off at simply because of the discrepancy in the numbers? So I think it is just all in the eye of the beholder. And what are you more comfortable with? And not just more comfortable, but what are you better at? You have to be honest.
Yeah, you got to handicap yourself as well as the horses, as well as the races. That's for sure. And I do think bets like obviously the win pool, especially when we get to the days of a fixed odds win pool, but the win pool in general, the double, they're fantastic for that more speculative, value-oriented approach. And then you can do longer picks, almost like as flyers. If you're putting, and we got to get to this race, but if you're going to put the majority of your bankroll into the pick 5, you're going to probably be playing not every horse you put in the sequence is going to be an overlay in every pool. You're just hoping it's an overlay in the pick 5 pool because the way you construct the ticket. But if you are putting more of your money into doubles, and your pick 5s are more like the icing on the cake, heck yeah, just play the horses you think are going to be overlays and just try to crush it, and don't worry about catching and recouping your money. We have some great comments that we need to get to, but I think we should talk about this race first.
Yep.
I'm betting this race. I really like Macedo. This is a pet angle, turf form, shipping west. This is good looking form. This is a horse that's supposed to like this galloping configuration. I think Macedo should be more like 2-1 than 3-1.
Oh, nice.
This is a clear play for me. We'll see. I mean, there are question marks here, obviously. Been off for 75 days and first start North America. But, typically I see that as a feature, not a bug. I mentioned the Cassie numbers here aren't necessarily great. The Gaffalione numbers this meet aren't necessarily great, but I think some of that's tied, as was pointed out on the show today by Pat Cummings and Blake Jesse, to the chilliness of the Maker Barn so far at this meet. Maybe, he fired a lot of bullets at Saratoga. Maybe that has something to do with it. But we'll see. But I think Macedo is a real nice play here at 3-1. I'm hammering it.
Well, and I think you bring up a point that we need to hammer home, and I try to do it when I write, soccer articles or hockey articles. I think when people hear overlay, that when put it this way, I shouldn't generalize. The folks who are new to whatever that term actually means, an overlay doesn't have to be a 20-1 shot. When you think the horse should be 2-1 and they're 3-1, that's a substantial overlay. That's 50% on top of what you think the actual odds should be. That's a tremendous betting opportunity. But I think many people just automatically hear overlay and they think, oh, it's got to be some boxcar kind of number. That's not the case. You're not looking at it the correct way or approaching it the correct way in the big picture. To me, there were 2 horses in this race I was interested in. I ultimately landed on the 5, Red Danger, in here for Brian Lynch. I thought it was a really solid effort, breaking the maiden up at Saratoga, steadied early on, looped the field, powered home at the end. I thought it was a little bit green, kind of, I don't want to say looking around because the horse's head wasn't cocked or anything, but definitely just, I think, was a learning experience. It was solid first time on the grass as well. And I don't think just based on the pedigree, this distance is going to be any sort of an issue. I wouldn't go any shorter than where you are right now. I didn't totally price it all out. 4-1 is as low as I would go. And based on the will pays, if I can quickly pull that up on the fly, the favorite, it looks like, is going to be the 3, or should be the 3. The 10 would be the second choice, and the 5 would be the third choice. They're not separated by that much, but enough where I would say you're probably going to be in that 4-1 range for the 5 when all is said and done. And to me, that's as low as I would go.
You'll accept that. Who was the other runner you were interested in?
The 9, actually. And it's weird because watching the tape, I wasn't blown away by it. Romancer, one in here for Steve Asmussen. But one of the products I use, HTR, is quite high on this horse. And I've seen many number 9s on the Horseplayers leaderboard right now for the happy hour. So there's got to be something there. And the horse is 10-1. So from a probability standpoint, again, not having priced the whole thing out, I don't think there should be such a significant discrepancy between the 5 and the 10. Based on the doubles, though, this is probably going to be pretty darn close. The 5 is paying just over $79, and the 9's paying just over $200. So the 9-2 versus 10-1, that's probably pretty accurate.
Romancer, the 9, has a couple angles I really like. A little bit of a flow upgrade coming out of the last race with a trip, but the main thing is I love it when they get on turf for the first time and the figure just goes way up like that. Maybe I think will probably in this spot be found wanting for class, but definitely one I would use to come in under my 3, and I don't mind using your 5 as well in that context. I
got to hear your opinion on Coffee Maker.
If we get the A game from Coffee Maker, she's got every chance to hang in here against the boys. But there's some real question marks in this spot, and it is, my thinking that it is more of a galloping configuration, and then on pace figures you've got 4 runners who are supposed to be faster than her. Ward does have success at this meet, there's no doubt about it, but I was taking a wait and see approach, especially at 9-5 here. I just if she wins today, she'll beat me, but I wouldn't be surprised. She definitely has the chance to kick some sand in the face based on the promise she showed earlier in her career.
Yeah, I had a difficult time seeing her at the price that she was likely to be, simply because I think she's going to get outfooted early on. She's never shown that she can pass a horse. And to your point, I don't think it's quite so significant as 2-year-olds, the girls taking on the boys, as maybe it is down the road in other instances. But just given the short price, I was willing to take a shot against.
Yeah, it feels like the famous connections are contributing to the price. This is one she may win, but I feel confident saying she's
somebody just flipped over.
Somebody
just flipped over. I can't tell.
Looks like we'll have a delay here.
You know what? I'm not even going to speculate. I believe I saw the silks, but we'll wait. I have a feeling it's the 7.
Okay.
I saw it looked like Calumet.
Okay. We'll see what happens. Hopefully this horse is
now
okay.
6 just broke through the gate.
Oh, we got all kinds of problems happening now.
Yeah, the kids are acting up.
Yeah, well, 2-year-olds, you get a lot of monkey see, monkey do, even at the stakes level.
Yep.
But hopefully they'll be able to. Hopefully everybody will be okay, and we can get ready for a start here without too much of a delay in this 9th race at Kentucky Downs, part of our Horse Player Happy Hour contest. There's some great questions in the queue, and we do have another win in your in race to talk about after this race. But we got a lot of time to dive deep into questions, so folks, feel free to keep those in. Somebody asked me why the light on my light box is not on. That is because I'm a dope. And when I came back and I did Monday Saratoga for Sky Sports Racing from the bunker here, and I have it battery powered to save me some power space. And rookie move. I hadn't been dealing with the light box in a while. I left it on overnight, and so then there was no more light box. And with all we have going on, I didn't have time to find 16 AAA batteries or whatever it takes. But the light box will be back in effect for tomorrow's show. At least I hope so.
Did they send that to you, or is that a purchase of yours?
No, that's one of mine. That's one of mine.
So I have, and I don't know the brand offhand. We got a late scratch. Detroit City is out.
Okay, so
that's the one who flipped over. That was the Calumet horse. Hopefully, that's the only defection.
Yeah, hopefully the one that broke through Pure Panic is A-okay.
I have these lights that they're plug-in, they're wired, but you have the ability to on the computer change the settings as far as cool them down, warm them up, change how bright they actually are, all sorts of different things, and they were pretty reasonable. Like I think the pair was $140, which if you're someone who does any kind of stuff like this, good lighting. And granted, I know I got a shadow because I got a hat on, but that's more a me being an idiot problem than the actual lights. In the grand scheme of things, I think I've been pleasantly surprised with them because I didn't know what I was going to get when I got my whole setup down here, trying to get things, all kind of straightened out. You never know what you're going to get until you fire them up, and I've been pleasantly surprised.
Folks getting to learn how the sausage is made a little bit with our little home TV studios across the In the Money Media Network today. Tell us what you're betting here, folks. We'll do a little bit of that kind of chatter and shout outs. See if we have anybody making V&W my pick. Vodka and water. That's the 4. This 5-start maiden. But you're getting wow. This horse 13-1. I mean, that's okay. I would have thought, I don't know. I guess with the scratch now too, and the way they're betting, I was going to say I thought you might even get a little bit bigger than that. But I guess on the morning line was only 10-1. I mean, hey, anytime you got a shot to catch a double-digit price, if you like anything about a double-digit price, I suppose you should go ahead and take it. Art's got the 369 try. I see. That's good. Tom chimes in about vodka water. Vodka and water wins. I need a vodka straight. Well, that's fair. That's fair. Here's one we can tackle right now from Carlos. Long shot sitting at Kentucky Downs. Not really. I think the longest price of the day, I think there was a $20 winner, but this has been fairly chalky for Kentucky Downs. I mean, just rolling through the prices, we had an even money shot win the first, 2-1 in the second, a 3-1 in the third, 10-1 in the fourth. We had a 5-2 in the fifth, and then from there another 2-1, another 3-. I mean, this is like super formful. Lamartine 13-20, the second biggest price of the day. So I don't know if that means we're due or if just Kentucky Downs isn't going to be fulfilling its reputation. And unfortunately, it looks like we do have another scratch here. Yeah,
pure panic is out. I saw another naked horse on the screen. I said that's not good. You're supposed to have your towel on, and she didn't, or he didn't, I should say. So another one's withdrawn. Everything we talked about with the odds. That goes out the window now just because you've lost 2 of 10. So everything has to be kind of recalibrated on the fly. But, and I guess this is now what I'm programmed to do in the short time between when they reload and they actually break. How has the complexion of the race changed? Because the 6 pure panic figured to show some speed.
Yeah.
The 7 Detroit City, I don't know if that speed would have played, but that was a horse that wanted to go also. So,
the pace scenario is completely. This has gone from a fast pace to a neutral at best, and that's
and I think doesn't this help Coffee Maker now?
Definitely, Coffee Maker is now in a beautiful spot.
And if you were willing to take 9-5 before, you should be getting stuck into 8-5 here when you've lost 2 of the speeds.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is a complexion of race changing thing. I'm going to keep my bet on the 3, but I don't like it nearly as much. That's just touching that hot stove enough times, canceling or greatly reducing the bet in this scenario. I'm just going to let it fly and say if I was unlucky, but because also, I'm hoping this horse won't be too far back. If I will say this, if I was on a horse I thought was going to be a deep closer, I would probably cancel it with 2 speeds scratching. And one like Coffee Maker who might have the potential to just control things up front. What's your attitude in those situations? You talk about you take another look. How likely are you to change what you had planned to do?
Well, for me, and also keep in mind, in a product like the pace projector from Timeform US needs to be given the benefit of the doubt in these kind of races, not just because of the scratches, but they're so lightly raced, these horses, that all of a sudden you can see a horse that's a lot closer to the pace in one race and come from a little bit farther out of it in the next. I think the pace projector, in my opinion anyway, is really at its best when you've got horses who have run a number of times and you kind of know what their game is.
It's a great point.
Red Danger is a horse who was close enough to a fast pace at Saratoga that I'm not hitting the panic button right now. I'm not going to make a change. To your point, though, if I was really stuck into a horse who, I'm just trying to rip through here. If let's just say for whatever reason you liked, well, you know what? Let's talk about the horse that you like in here, Macedo, because running style wise, this is one that in theory is going to be coming from the back, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll be among the leaders. I'm hoping doesn't have to be too far back. I don't have any sectional information handy, but I'm hoping we're not going to be coming from last.
The only thing I would do is to, and I know like you were just kind of alluding to, you've been burned before, those sort of things. If I had a horse that was pace dependent, let's put it that way, maybe I wouldn't totally pull the ripcord, but I would probably maybe have the bet depending on the size of it.
Yeah, that would probably be the smarter thing for me to do here, but I'm gonna let it fly.
Hey, it's happy hour.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Hey, and by the way, speaking of happy hour, I'm not going to give a plug to any certain brand. I've pivoted to 0% alcohol beer, and
interesting.
It's quite nice, mainly because I just didn't want to deal with the headaches in the morning anymore.
Right. No, I get it. I've never found there's supposed to be some good ones, and I've never found one to like fully grok to. But I'd be interested, especially now. I'm going through I'm not saying I'm not drinking at all, but I'm going through a decidedly drier period after the splish splash of 8 weeks away at Saratoga, and that might be a nice thing out whilst enjoying your outdoor barbecuing and whatnot. And I know a lot of athletic. I know a lot of the Paddock Bar crew has gotten into that. Honestly, I've noticed some of the guys who for me, I drink those, and I will plug them even though they don't pay us. But the blue Saratoga sparkling water, I just drink so much of it, I feel obligated. That's my equivalent. Is just so refreshing, 0 calorie. But I definitely get it. I respect to anybody cracking an NA beer here for Horseplayer Happy Hour, and we're finally off. And we do have an aggressive move to the lead from this runner who's a very, very big long shot,
which I appreciate. I mean, if you're in it to win it, aren't you? I mean, the likelihood of you sitting off of a pace and passing these other, well-bred horses or whatever it may be seems kind of unlikely. Just put the boots to him and say, if you're going to beat me, come and catch me. So I appreciate the ride. I don't know if it'll work out or not. You see Coffee Maker perched 3-4 path right now. I would say this is an ideal kind of trip. I have no idea if she's good enough, but I don't think there'll be an excuse as far as, the trip is concerned. You and I think we both have a little bit of work to do, but they're starting to kind of pick their feet up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's fast on the clock, like we discussed. It's with the downhill, it's not as fast as it seems, but the whole race has an opportunity to change here. Is that the 3 in the slipstream about to tip out and come, or is that the 5? Okay.
So you and I are right next to one another.
Okay. You might have gotten the jump, but I mean, this horse has no excuse. Let's see if we can finish the race and run 1-2 here. It doesn't look like I'm getting there. Who's this on the farther outside? Is that you, or are you the one in the middle?
I'm between in the pink.
Okay.
I need to finish. I think this one's got it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, no finish for the 3.
Hey, there's an exacta for you, 59.
Beautiful work. Beautiful work. Red Danger comes in over Romancer. We talked about that angle for Romancer to come in underneath. Yeah, I saw no excuse for the 2 at the top of the market in Coffee Maker and Macedo. I thought Macedo was in a really nice spot. I don't think you can blame the pace. I mean, the winner got the exact same trip, so just not blossoming at the moment for the new barn or whatever you want to say. I mean, on form, that horse was supposed to run better than that, but all credit to you for coming up with that nice 59 exacta. The parade of shorter prices continues. I know I did see a lot of 5s on the leaderboard, including all 3 Michael Domable entries, I believe. So he will be moving. He'll be moving up the leaderboard. Now in the last race, he's got the 10. It's not the last race of the day at Kentucky Downs, but it's the last race of our contest. I should specify that. But the 10 Hendy Woods, that's not. I mean, look, he's still drawing live, but it would have got real interesting if he had a 15-1 shot or something there. But it'll still be interesting to see what kind of impact he can make on the leaderboard. Definitely one of the fun stories to follow here as we get to the sharp end of this Horseplayer Happy Hour.
You figure he had 2 entries at 36 and the other one at 46. The 46 one will probably get close to Paul. Won't get. Let me rephrase that. Well, yeah. I mean, it actually probably won't be too far off. You figure you're going to get $7 for the win. Maybe you get 4 to place, probably 3.5, something thereabouts. So tack on
10.
Yeah, let's say 10. So that puts him at 56 for that one, sitting just outside. Keep in mind, the folks that had the 9 are going to get a pretty healthy place price, I would assume, because this horse
horse was 8 or 9 to 1, right? Or what happened after the scratches?
Yeah, so it went off at 6, I believe. So you're going to get a decent enough place price. Maybe you end up with $6 there to place. But then his other two, Michael's other two, that should put him up into the 45 range. I mean, depending on how they bet the race, if the morning line's accurate, he could be drawing live with all 3 of them with Hendy Woods.
To get tour points, certainly to get tour points.
Certainly to get tour points, but I mean to finish, but this is just purely, spitballing. I could see a scenario where he can run 1.56.
Something like that. Yeah, Michael Bryant. There are 3 other players that have the horse, including critically Peter Savage. Though I guess, second. That second means so much. There were not a little bit farther down. There were some 9s. We'll see. They're going to hang this new leaderboard up here in a minute. Then we'll go back. We got a lot of. We'll see. I'm hoping they reset the clock and take out those 5 minutes. I got a curtain I got to get to it at 8 o'clock. I'm hoping we don't start running in.
What are you seeing?
I'm seeing it's actually a rock show, a band that you've probably never heard of because they're fairly obscure. But there'll be some people out here who remember the band King Crimson, sort of a progressive rock band started in the late 60s with some crazy heavy metal vibes going on too, and very experimental and weird. They have 3 drummers. I mean, and they're crazy and they're fun and they're playing at the Beacon. But anyway, I hopefully will be able to get there in time to see the show if they don't add 20 minutes on to the situation here. But let us know in the comments if you remember In the Court of the Crimson King. I want to hear if anybody knows what the hell I'm talking about.
They have 27 minutes listed.
Okay.
So
that's reasonable. That's reasonable. Yeah.
If you need to dip, you need to dip. I can bring us home, but
we can make that work. We can make that
okay.
Work. All right, let's see. Let's go back. Let's do some questions because we got some great ones. Some are silly, but we like those too. All right, let's check the leaderboard real quick. Paul Matisse, Charles Lucas moves up. Tom Rapps, Michael Domable, Peter Savage, Rock Edwards, Mike Simonovich, Michael Bryant, Amy Warren, Steve McNatton, and Steve Genslinger are the 11 listed there right now with 1 race to go. We do have a lot of 10s. We have a lot of people who have a chance to sneak into this exacta depending on what happens in this spot. It's going to be very interesting to see as we approach this final race. But there's so many good ones. I want to go back all the way. Let's see. There's some good stuff here. All right, we did that long shots one. Okay, that's a great one. Let's see. We'll start with this one. I might miss some people, but I can't go back too far. It's too boring watching me scroll through. Michael says, it's funny when you have the same picks, you either feel smart or really dumb, but Matt is correct. There are people you feel comfort from. I would agree with that. Tom, trying to break the underlay habit. In a pick and pray, how do you determine an overlay? This is a fabulous question. And there's a lot of feel involved. There's a lot of how much do you trust your morning line maker? But, and just really it's a feel thing. I don't think there's any real mathematical way to do it. You just have to sort of know, wait, these horses are going to have to take money. The crowd's been betting all of this jockey's horses down. So the fact that I'm on this, my horse has this great form, but he's got these lower profile connections. And that's one thing in general that I think helps is lower profile connections, not obvious pace horses. Like it's just that little extra bit of subtlety that makes you feel confident the crowd isn't going to fall for your horse. I mean, that's one thing in a pick and pray you can do to find an overlay. This is one I want to ask a bunch of people and get an array of answers to. What answer comes to your mind for this one, Matt?
Well, I think you can kind of put a couple different things together here. I continue to bring up the idea of making your own line, and your line is only as good as it is accurate. It's one thing to sit there and price it out, and I'm not going to, I've seen people throw things out to me in the past and say, oh, this horse has a 75% chance of winning. And I go, no, they don't. They just don't. I don't care how. Yeah. You're talking about unicorns in that instance.
Couple horses that.
Yeah, right. Horses that are omnifigs, and they're not just omnifigs; they're omnifigs by 25. I mean,
Maybe
it really
more than a couple of times a year, but maybe once a month.
Yeah. So your line is only as good as it is accurate. But then once you feel comfortable in putting together a line, then you can kind of go through and suss out some of the pieces that perhaps the public is going to get stuck into, as you were just bringing up the idea of, I'm making it up. There's a horse from a high profile barn. You have reason to believe, maybe they were on the best part of the racetrack in the most recent run, and the likelihood of them winning is not nearly what the public is going to suggest they're going to be. Well, there's your underlay right there. That's one that you're going to avoid unless you're just completely convinced they're going to win, which goes back to the conversation we had earlier about you only have a finite number of opportunities to strike. If you're not sold or you think the horse is going to be an underlay, move to another option, a horse that you think might offer a little bit of a better price. One of the prudent things that I've had many people bring up to me with pick and praise, and it only works for a few of them, but you figure more often than not, the first few races of a contest are going to be relatively close to one another timing wise. You may end up having an opportunity to not only look at the live odds for the first few races, if you have different racetracks involved, but then also look at the double probables.
That's a great idea.
To try to get an idea for that second leg. So theoretically, let's say you've got a 12 race contest and you have 3 different racetracks going off, and the first 3 go off at a time. You can get an idea based on the actual prices that you're seeing for the first leg, and then use the double probable to get an idea about that second leg, and then adjust accordingly. If you think you've got a horse that's going to get pounded, then yeah, maybe you need to pivot and look for a horse that perhaps is going to offer a more appetizing price.
Yeah, who's getting ignored? Even if there is a mathematical way you can compute those double will pays, double probables into odds, but if nothing else, by feel, you can get you can get it all sorted out. Got some other good comments here. Contest playing humbles you, says Joe. When the public that is a favorite beats you with a regular bet, it's easy to shrug off. When you're in a contest and everyone has a 60-1 shot, you wonder what you missed. I mean, and that makes me think about the NHC specifically, and that ability to just not worry when other people are coming up with these crazy long shots that you don't come up with. I mean, I'm usually pretty confident going back and looking and saying, Jonathan's expression for that is it's a senseless horse. I'm not going to worry about it. It's a senseless horse. If you go, I would always go back and look and say, hey, was there something I missed? But a lot of the time it's just random. And the reason a bunch of people have it in the contest is it's just people using game theory and taking a shot at a horse who's a price. So I wouldn't get too beat up on that, though. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think also to the idea of it's a humbling experience. It's my personal belief that that's part of the reason that you don't see more public handicappers or people who do this, more on the front-facing side of things, because the reality is you're going to lose a lot more than you win. And in contests, if you're putting yourself in optimal position to win, you're going to have a lot of times where you have goose eggs.
Yep.
And you need to be able to stomach that. I think it does, for me anyway, it's never bothered me simply because this is kind of how everything started for me. It was with contests. And it's like, okay, well, if you're not doing it this way, you're probably doing it wrong. But I can't help but think that that's part of the reason you don't see more people who are, let's say, in the public eye playing in more contests, because I think there's an element of they don't want, they're afraid of having a bad weekend or a bad day or a bad whatever to make it look, for fear that it reflects poorly upon them. When in reality, I think anyone that plays in these sort of events for any length of time, you recognize that's just how it is in these sort of things. And there's nothing wrong with stringing together 10 or 15 zeros in a row if you're trying to put yourself in the best position to ultimately come out on top.
Yeah, and that's where it gets hard as a public handicapper, because in a way, let's just say you were really good at picking one big long shot every week that pays for every losing bet. To me, if you're the public handicapper, you're not you might have a positive ROI, and for me, you're still not really serving the audience who might be somebody going out there one day and they want winners. Now, I'm also not saying you should give out every favorite, because, they can just see the tote board and do that. But it's definitely a delicate dance for me, and trying to find the races where you want to say, okay, this is a race that's going to probably narrow down, and it's going to be something at the shorter end of the odds spectrum. And then, at a race where the top two favorites aren't good, by all means, go ahead and fly away. But, it's the goals are very different. It's not as simple as ROI equals success for a public handicapper. And I know, especially with the English stuff I do with the fixed odds, I'm very focused on giving winners, and it's sometimes at the expense of, when you can mention in your write-up, here's one that might be interesting at a bigger price. If you're allergic to favorites, or whatever, go ahead and throw that one in. But I want winners. If I come away in a contest, I go 0 for 10. I don't care. As a public handicapper, the rare times I've gone 0 for 10, it's not fun.
Well, and I mean, I think that's, again, goes back to just a different philosophy where I approach it kind of differently, where I look at it and go, I want to try to give you something that maybe you didn't see, or you missed out on. And what can I really offer you with the 2-to-1 shot that you didn't already know?
Yeah, that's fair.
And while maybe people look at it and say, oh, he doesn't pick many winners, that's not my problem. I'm hopeful to offer up something that maybe is a little, I don't want to say outside the box, but again, more in the vein of, okay, you went through, I'm assuming you also went through the race. If you didn't go through the race and you just want to hear a horse, you're probably not the audience I'm speaking to. I'm thinking more from the idea of, I went through this one dreamer. I'm at home handicapping. Okay, I like X, Y, and Z. Well, who does he like? And is it going to be a horse that I already know everything he's talking about? Or is it something with maybe a price that I missed out on? And even if I don't love the horse, maybe it's enough to convince me to use in an exacta or a trifecta or something like that. So it is. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, I don't think, but it is just a philosophical difference. And I think, again, the contest background for me, I think just programs me to think that way, as opposed to, and I fall into it with horses. Put it this way, I'll give out the chalk if I think they are absolute. I think they're going to win. Last weekend, Warlike Goddess, she was the most likely winner. I went with Great Island. And you know what? She ran just fine to run second. She was never going to beat Warlike Goddess. And then in the next race, I took the chalk because I thought Forza Dioro was just the best horse. And good call by you to say that there was perhaps question about the distance, because I don't think he saw it out. I think he just got short at the end of the run. And conversely, the horse that won, I mean, he looks like a different racehorse now.
He definitely is. That Max Player. I mean, that's a good angle when they, condition. We talked a lot about condition handicapping last week, and when a horse either starts to show early speed that they didn't have, condition arrow up, then I think to a runner like Arrogate, when he stopped showing that early speed that he once had, condition angle down. And you're absolutely right. Like, our own experiences really color how we approach this. In a fixed odds world, there's so many good 2-to-1 shots. I want people to know the difference between the good 2-to-1 shot and the myth 2-to-1 shot. And that's why I end up, I think, picking a lot of 2-to-1 shots. But I also take your point that, like, there's a limit to the amount of help that I have sympathy for the point of view that there's a limit to the amount of help that can possibly give. And, let us know in the comments, when you read somebody else's analysis, what are you looking for? Are you just looking for winners? I mean, I love what Matt said about you want them to see something that's not evident. I mean, I totally agree with that. And, whether I think that can happen at the lower end of the odds spectrum, but it's a lot more likely to happen at the higher end of the odds spectrum. Let's roll through a few more of these, including we've got some cheeky ones we'll throw in. I like this comment from Joe, who wears a tinfoil hat, so Tony Joe won't be able to tell his picks ahead of time. John Gasper says you can't follow JK, thinks his internet connection is broken. He has not been very active in $2 win place contests. I assume that is what that is a reference to. He's a busy man. What can I tell you? Let's see. All right, we did that one already. Here's another one from John, a little more serious. Contest plays hurt his cash play. So attuned at avoiding short prices in a contest, started passing logical low-priced favorites that could be linchpins in multi-pick sequences. And that's kind of what I was talking about before. It's like I almost have to decide at the beginning of the day which hat I'm going to put on. There are some people who can do that mental jujitsu, and maybe John working at it or doing it like at different time. I mean, this is just the first thing that comes to mind is your first blush through, you do your contest picks. Then the next day after scratches, you get down in there and you do your fine tuning, and maybe you can look at it from more of a live bank approach, and you can bring a fresh brain with a different perspective to each endeavor, as opposed to trying to do both things at once. We answered Carlos's question. We went through all these. Michael gives you credit for the ability to cancel bets. Wish he had the guts for that. Yeah, that's a tricky one. There were some horror stories at the Paddock Bar this year about the people canceling. Just the story you always hear. You cancel. Oh, I wanted the 7, not the 6, and then here comes the horse that was canceled. Zooming on the outside. I like this comment from Tom. Matt on the East Coast, but live in Hollywood with the lighting, no doubt about it. Nancy chimes in. At Kentucky Downs on Sunday with lots of long shots, but on soft turf. Mentions the Arlington shippers doing well. Worth a look for underneath. That's an interesting observation. I could see, especially ones coming off the synthetic getting ignored, but just in general, not racing we think of, sadly, as top class anymore. So the idea that Arlington shippers could provide value makes sense. Oh, Tom's concerned about my health. How often did the Peloton get fired up at Saratoga? It wasn't pretty, my friend. It wasn't pretty. I might have. Here's the thing. I think I only did about 3 days, but I did at least 7 days of swimming down at the pool club with Perrin. So that sort of superseded it. But I'll say this: I've been on the Peloton every day since I got back, and I've been on the yoga mat every day since I've got back. So I'm my condition arrow. I've got two arrows pointing up. Oh, here's John, who came to see us at the Brentwood but had to run. Sorry I didn't get to hang longer at the Brentwood. I mean, when is the last time Bus from NYC was early on time? Early. That is rare, a real rarity. You gotta stay over. You gotta book your room at the Brentwood next year. Go over to Walton Whitman and have a couple of beers as well while you're in Saratoga. But John, we appreciated you coming by, and it was great to see you. Joe asks, Joe knows King Crimson. Fripp is still in the band, and he's not an original member, but he's a longtime member. Tony Levin. He's from the 80s incarnation. Anyway, it's going to be fun. Sam Stinson he gives the shout out to Epitaph. Great song on their first album, which has been in the set list. When I saw them up at SPAC, they played that. Tom, thank you for the kind words. Joe cheering on Mike. We'll say to that. How about this? Why doesn't the guy doing I guess that's TVG, I don't know. Right up, give winners. Great write-ups, but seems different. Huh. I'm not really sure I understand this comment, Michael. Be more specific about who you're talking about there, and maybe I can give you a comment on it. But I will say this: everybody has a different approach, and some people are a little bit more discursive, and they're giving more like closer look type DRF analysis, where they will sometimes say the pick or whatever, but sometimes they're trying to give more of an overview of the race. Stefan says that he might give Forzadoro another shot with a target. I mean, maybe, but boy, did he empty out like he didn't want to go that far. I mean, I'm probably on Stefan. You and I will be on opposite sides of that one if we see him going long again. I haven't heard what the plan is, but another way to get a target is to cut back to a race like the Kelso, and then there's going to necessarily be more speed, and you accomplish two things. You know what I'm saying? That sure did not look like. I didn't hear Mott talk about it after the race, but that sure did not look like a 1.25 mile horse to me.
No, and I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things too, I thought the trip was pretty cushy. If you're going to get 1.25 miles, I think it's going to be with that kind of a run. And he just, at no point when I was watching the race down there on the rail, in my head did I think he was. I shouldn't say at no point, but basically as they were rounding the far turn, at no point did I think he was just going to, break and go on with it. He just always looked like he was kind of fighting. And he just, for whatever reason, the distance, I think it got to him. And I guess the horse is coming out of that race, probably Max Player. Happy Saver didn't run poorly. He still feels more like a stayer to me than anything else. But Max Player becomes at least if you're trying to get cute in a race like the Classic, I don't think he's fast enough right now, but he surely looked like a horse that wanted every inch of the ground. I thought he was running his best at the very end. And that's, there aren't many horses that you can say that about.
I think that's absolutely fair. We've got a question about a horse called Command Performance. Which one is this,
buddy?
Matt?
Oh, he's my favorite 2-year-old of the entire summer so far. Monday afternoon on the undercard of the Hopeful. He ran second for Todd Pletcher, first-time starter, owned by Rapoli and St. Elias. The pedigree would suggest he wants to run all day. I believe it was Union Rags. And with the way the trip played out, I thought he ran exceptionally well for a firster. I said it on my show on Monday, so much so that if I were involved, I would at least think about, and I haven't seen a fig, and I'm going to do that actually on the fly here. I would at least think about running him in the Champagne as a maiden. I don't know that
before.
I don't know if they'll do it, but I was really impressed by it. And if I'm thinking Breeders' Cup time, and also if you're trying to get kind of cheeky with, as I'm one to do, looking for futures maybe down the road, I could see him developing into a classic type, a 1.25 mile kind of horse that he's doing this simply because he's a baby right now. He's going to want to go longer when all is said and done. I'll be curious to see what the next move is. Maybe it is as simple as just getting that maiden score under his belt, and then, maybe you just bypass the Breeders' Cup and you start thinking long-term. But I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of just, I don't want to say throwing him into the deep end. I think the fig is probably going to be pretty good. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, see if you can find that. Steven mentions Malathot in the context of Forza Doro, and it's totally different to me. I mean, Malathot had a very difficult trip, and she was, for me, taken out of her game much more by having a couple of horses make runs at her early. She had to go from the rail. I guess he's saying maybe Forza Doro had to go from the rail, but I don't know. I mean, he was unpressured, and I thought he's more of a galloping type than Malathot. I mean, that's what makes horse racing great, is we can agree to disagree. But I don't see the commonality between those two trips. And Malathot on her blood is supposed to love going long, and Forza Doro kind of isn't. I mean, I tried to make the case that he was going to be okay, but on the Equine Edge genetic strength rating, he came out much weaker going that extra distance. And, there were some real question marks in the pedigree, even though, you will see he's Speightstown, I think, right? I mean, you will see Speightstowns who can go long, but it's not really their bag. But anyway, it's not, I'm not mad at you, Stefan. It's great to have differences of opinion. It's what makes the game great.
Yeah. My thought there to that idea of, Forza Dioro is Speightstown out of a hard spun mare.
It was an open question, but I mean, I feel like it's been asked and answered.
And with Malathot, I agree with you. I think she looked her best going a 1.25 miles. I think she wants to run all day. I think that's probably part of the reason that the connections were as bullish as they were, and at least even kicked the tires on a race like the Belmont. And for the longest time said, yeah, we're going to go to the Breeders' Cup, but we don't know what race, because I think she wants to run 10 miles. Now, I'm certainly not suggesting she should take on boys. She should, go on to the distaff, do what you will there. If she's good enough, so be it. But to that point, I think she is very clearly a horse that wants distance. And Forza Dioro, I was wrong about. I thought he was going to be just fine stretching out, and I think he hit the wall. As far as that race that I was speaking of, and I'd probably give a shout to the winner, Don't Wait Up, who ended up winning gate to wire fashion in Saratoga's 7th race on Monday.
Oh, now I'm remembering the race. It took me forever. Yeah, that Command Performance is really supposed to be a runner. We talked about on Baby Talk with Sean Tugel, and had that horrible trip though. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, earned a 75. So for a career debut over a muddy sealed track with a trip going 6 furlongs, and when I look at the horse, I go, you probably are going to be a proper router. I think that's a very encouraging debut, one that you're going to learn from. I'd be very curious to know what everyone involved plans on doing. Maybe they just go to Belmont, and you're getting to that point now in the year where you're going to get longer maiden races carded for the 2-year-olds. So maybe you just go that route and say, let's get the maiden win before we do anything crazy. But I would at least think about a race like the Champagne.
It is tough when the figure comes back. It's similar to what the situation with the Filly Canching. Like, visually, both those horses gave to me the impression of just go right to the stakes. But then I look at the figures and I'm like, maybe win your maiden first. But it's tough because you only get one. Winning grade 1 at 2 makes you so valuable that I totally get it. If they, you only get one chance really to win. I mean, you only get one chance to win the Breeders' Cup. So,
and that's kind of my thought is worst case scenario, unless you're fearful that you're going to end up breaking the horse and they're not going to end up, maybe you're going to have them asked to do too much too soon. But if you go to the Champagne and it doesn't work, you regroup. You get ready for Aqueduct. You do whatever you need to do,
exactly.
and you break your maiden that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Let's do the race real quick. I'm boring here. I think the top of the market is the right place to go. I thought the 7 and the 10 both had very valid claims and picks. I'd be happy just running through the two of those. Did you have anything clever here, first of all?
Yeah, you know what? I've never been her biggest fan, but I think this race could set up pretty favorably for Sweet Melania. She's going to be forwardly placed, but I don't, in my heart of hearts, despite the fact that all of her victories have come effectively in gate-to-wire fashion, I don't think she's actually dependent on the lead, although she may end up getting it here by default. She's run well at Keeneland in the past, which, again, I'm trying to, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to see things that aren't actually there, but I'm trying to make that connection of Keeneland form or Keeneland being able to handle the turf at Keeneland, which I think is a little bit of we talked about it leading into the Breeders' Cup last year. It's not a turf course that all horses handle very well. The ones who have handled that, I'm trying to make the analogy that perhaps they'll handle Kentucky Downs well, because last fall we saw the Kentucky Downs form transfer to Keeneland very, very well. And she's a very playable price to me at 5-1. I like Hendy Woods. I respect her. I think she's overbet at 3-1. And Dominga, I don't know. I mean, what massive edge does she have on this field to be 5-2? Am I missing something?
I mean, I think on figures she's supposed to be 5-2-ish, but it's not super exciting. I think she's going to get a good trip. I think she's got the speed to be in position and the finish to potentially take down the 10 and the 11 late. And I think that's, I mean, my gut is that's about right, but it's not certainly not cut in line to bet type stuff. I'll give you.
Well, and I guess that's just it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying she shouldn't be a short price. I don't know. I failed to see why she's and I guess she's not totally a clear favorite because Hendy Woods is right there. And maybe I'm actually talking myself and convincing myself that the price is accurate. But I don't know. I looked at this field and I thought maybe, I think the outside two runners both have every right to win this race at 6-1.
Well, we did see we did see I'll Handle the Cash run pretty well. Granted, it was a slow pace she was able to control that day. And I would assume we're going to see a little more aggressiveness from Sweet Melania this time around. I guess that's one thing I don't like about her. I don't like seeing those pace figures just go so far down the last day. But it was off a layoff. Maybe she can do a lot better in this spot. We got a couple of other comments I'd love to get to before we get to wrap this thing up. Mike Salakis in a multi-race wager would like to pick 5. What happens if 2 horses you choose are scratched at the gate, but you already have the post-time favorite? I guess you just lose out on those horses. Not really. You get the post-time favorite extra time.
Correct.
So, you don't, you do lose out on the chance of those horses winning. But, let's face it, if they're scratched at the gate, they were scratched at the gate for a reason. They weren't going to win the race. So, I mean, look, I'm a believer. I much would rather have there be alternates. And I'd love to see a day where we have a vibrant tote system where you can list alternate horses when your horse scratches at the gate. And that would be fabulous. So I mean, I'm not like, I don't love the post-time favorite thing, but it's not like you're throwing that money down a hole, just to
correct.
Just to clarify. And Trish comes back. Any thoughts on Swiss Skydivers 4-year-old season? Is it Lasix making the difference? Muggs, handicapping Labrador, very interested in this question. Trish says she'll always be a fan, but kind of sad to see the last few races. I'll tell you what, she might have a big race left. I don't particularly like the last 3 rides. And now maybe I'm just making excuses, but I just feel like we've seen Swiss Skydiver get in these situations where it's 1 foot on the boat and 1 foot on the dock, and then you get wet. And what I mean by that is showing this immense early speed, but then not like going on with it. And I get it. I mean, these are some tough horses, especially with Nick's Go in a race they didn't even want to be in. I get being in that position and saying, you know what, I think we're going to let this gorilla go do his own thing. And maybe it was the same thing the last day with Latruska. But, let me see her drawn outside in a race with plenty of pace where she's going to get a completely different kind of trip. Or let me see her try to take the bull by the horns and go to the lead one time. Trish, you may be right. And she's probably never going to be a price because she's famous. But I think she has not been shown to her best effect with the rides she's received the last 3 times. Am I making too many excuses for this really cool filly?
I mean, for me, probably. but
it's acceptable.
Yeah, and it's not that I'm also acknowledging I could be totally wrong. And she has run fast in the past. It wouldn't be a total stunner if you had a form reversal. I don't know. I kind of go through, and I agree with you with some of the ways in which she's been used. And this campaign has clearly not been what the design was. So maybe she does have some excuses there. But I was involved in a little kind of Twitter thread that was going on one day, and I believe it was Chris Larmy who pointed it out, and it's true. I mean, her signature win came with an unreal ride in the Preakness on the best part of the racetrack. And yeah, she defeated a really good horse as they're away from the gate here in the One Dreamer. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of wondering if this kind of is what she is now.
It could be. It well could be. I want to see her get a ride where I don't like throw up my hands and say, ugh, halfway through. I'm not saying that just because they didn't work out. I just, it's very hard for a horse. Go, 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 go. Stop. It's not an easy way to fly.
Yeah, true enough, man. I cannot argue with that piece. It's
might be my least favorite ride.
Maybe some decisiveness would probably go a long way to either confirming or denying that she either can't do it anymore or, whatever the case may be. But
I'm not like really looking to beat up the jocks either. Like I guess some of it is circumstantial, especially in the Knicks Go situation. But, at the same time, I'm just holding out that hope that we could see something special for her. But that is absolutely true. I mean, if Authentic just goes to the rail, she doesn't win that race. It was everything worked out for her in the Preakness for sure. But I mean, that wasn't her only fast race either.
No,
I think she's cool. I'd like to see her have a Glory Days run, and I wouldn't put it out of the question. Who's going to win this race?
Finish, sweet Melania. Finish.
Oh, that camera angle changes.
Man, we've got so far to go.
I know. That's they do move. They tend to move a little early here.
Oh, she's fighting. Hendy Woods is going to get her, but man, I'll tell you what. Hendy Woods powered home too.
Oof, that was a very nice finish.
I thought we were only about an eighth of a mile away, and then all of a sudden, I've got a whole stretch.
False finish. It's not just you; it's the riders, and they're making a lot more money doing this than you. So don't feel too bad. That was a nice performance by this one, who really got bet down and showed why, asserting her superiority over this field in the late stretch and looking like one who really enjoyed that finish at Kentucky Downs. Definitely a horse. Definitely a horse who was seen to good effect on that turf course. That's for sure.
She's on the improve.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, I say what you will. Maybe she's not a Breeders' Cup kind of horse, but she's got to be in a graded stake after this race. This is going to be back-to-back pretty solid speed figures.
No doubt about it. And we'll see what the next target is. NFL. Does NFL start tonight?
Yes, it does.
Did you handicap this football game?
I did. Yeah. So my model, granted, and I had to allude to it during the podcast on Monday, it's factoring in last year's data because we don't really have anything to go off of this year. The addition, I guess, if you will call it so, of Dak Prescott probably changes the numbers slightly, but my model spit out 35-18 Tampa. I put basically a 6-point sort of tack on for Dak, so call it 35-24, which is certainly enough to cover what I got in at, which was 8. When I recorded, it was 7.5, but now I'm seeing some books have pushed it all the way out to 9. So the money is coming in on the champs. The Super Bowl champions typically win that first game of the season, and they have the entire team coming back. I think Tampa, maybe it's not the popular choice, but I just think Tampa is going to come right back and be a force again here this year.
Speaking of football, new podcast on the network, a producer Craig production, as it were, Odds Honest Truth. Check it out. I understand you might be involved in some of these upcoming shows, Matt.
Yeah, I told him I could help out if he ever needed a hand, and we'll cross that bridge when the time comes. But yeah, he asked for a little something. I said I think I can help.
I love that. And JK too. He does a lot of football. It's funny for somebody who did that for so much for so long. I've racing has just taken over my brain to the point where I haven't properly handicapped the football. Sometimes I can't resist getting involved with the in-running stuff, the in-game stuff. There's a few angles that I find irresistible, and it'll get me to put my hand in my pocket or finger on keyboard, as the case may be. But yeah, I'd love to. Maybe this will drag me back into it unwillingly, which would be kind of fun.
If you're someone who you're watching the game tonight and for whatever reason, and you like Tampa, with the number, to your point, if you're looking for sort of, in-game play, and Dallas gets out to a quick, maybe they score a touchdown early on and that number changes pretty dramatically, there's a prime opportunity to get involved at what's likely going to be a much shorter price than the whatever it is now, if it is all the way up to 9.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's one of the angles I like when when you can get. I think that the in-game markets tend to be a lot more fickle, and it's hard because sometimes they're changing for a reason. If there's an injury or something schematic, or especially early in the year, if things aren't quite what the early price seemed, but sometimes there's a lot of signal in that starting price, and when that big favorite comes out cold, and you can get on them when they're down at something close to even, it's it's not as effective as it used to be, because the prices are much more intelligent now than they were, say, I don't know, I'm just picking this number theoretically, but 8 years ago. But it was an interesting time for a minute there, before the computers came in and started making everything priced correctly. You could find all kinds of interesting chestnuts. All right, we're unofficial here, but it's just a matter of time. As soon as this goes official, we'll have a leaderboard and be able to send everybody home, hopefully happy. We've got 2 more of these horse player happy hours. Next week, is New York back next week? What do we be looking at? When do they come back?
They should be. Yeah, they should be back next week. Off the top of my head, I want to say, don't they usually start on like a Friday when they go back to Belmont?
Perhaps they do. So we might be doing something. We might be in an interesting situation where we're looking at a multi-track cobbled together kind of deal, which would be kind of fun. But I mean, we've only got a couple of weeks left, so we're playing. We'll play on whatever content we have over at horseplayers.com. We'll cobble together. Maybe we'll try to cobble together an 8-race contest with 3 tracks or something, and we'll test people a little bit different way. But really appreciate how folks supported us this week here on Horse Player Happy Hour. These are good numbers, and I do think that we got hurt. We would probably cost 20, 25, 30 entries on those Saratoga full carders, where we just got very unlucky with the rain. As they always say, nothing makes a racetrack executive, or in this case, a contest hoster, look smarter than good weather.
Well, and look, I think it's even more, important for an event or a meet like this weekend with Kentucky Downs. The weather's supposed to be fantastic. You don't have to deal with any kind of a bog and trying to deal, that talk about an X factor. That's another thing that can just kind of throw chaos at you. But it sounds like we're going to be dealing with nice firm turf conditions down there in, I believe, Franklin, Kentucky.
Hendy Woods pays $660 to win. Sweet Melania $720, a generous $720 to place, returning a $24.70 exacted that I'd like to think anybody just following us in blind would have had between my confidence on 710 in the top spot and your clever suggestion of the 11 in the second spot. So this means, Craig, we'll have a final leaderboard.
We do. It's juicy too.
It's good.
It's juicy.
Let's see it. All right, there we go. Oh, there it is. Michael Domable does get the job done, putting a little bit of pressure on David Browning and giving us a storyline, and perhaps a guest for next week as well on these shows. Michael, if you're out there and interested, $67. Peter Savage played a great game. He was there the whole time, ends up second. He'll be playing in that exacta tournament. Remember, you could be starting for the first time next week. You end up in the top 2. You're going to be in that tournament. 80 players at the end of the season. It'll be filled out with players with top tour finishes. Rock Edwards, love that name. Michael Bryant, good stuff, Michael. Active in the comments, active on the leaderboard. Paul Matisse, Stephen McNatten, Mark, Simonovich, Charles Lucas, Tom Rapps, 2 more Michael Domables. How funny is that? So I don't even know in our own rules. I think Michael probably has enough scores that a 10 isn't going to do much for him, but to tie yourself for 10th, I don't like that's going to make my head explode to even know what's going to happen on the leaderboard. Let's hope it doesn't come into play. Let's keep scrolling there, Craig, so we can get the other numbers down. We've got, oh my goodness, look at that, Matt Miller with 3 entries. He'll move on to Saturday. Amy Warren, Steve Genslinger, and then Michael Robinson with William Bamer, I'm guessing, as the unlucky bubble boy. A closing thought from you, Matt, before we send this home.
No, just looking forward to getting down to Kentucky Downs for some good racing on Saturday afternoon. And don't forget, in just about 45 minutes time, if you want to hear more about the Saturday card, I'll be over on the HHH Racing Podcast hosted by Howard Kravitz. So that'll be over on YouTube and things like that. And yeah, man, looking forward to checking out a racetrack that I've never been to before. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be fun, I guarantee. We'll be watching you and enjoying TV's Matt Bernier. We thank you one more time. We thank producer Craig. We thank our friends at the Breeders' Cup. Horseplayers.com is the place to go. Join us for this game next week. We are in the Money Media, in the Money Podcast.com to get a ton more content, lots more Kentucky Downs stuff coming down the pike. Check him out on the Matt Bernier Show, me on the In the Money Players podcast. Haley Amos, we'll give a shout out to her. Justin McDonald as well. That's going to do it. This show's been a production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. On our side, Drew Coatney is our business manager. Jonathan Kinchin is our chief creative officer. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal, and I've got my remote control, which I'm going to hit right after I say, may you win all your photos!